Good afternoon, everyone. Assalamu alaikum, and welcome to the Education Above All plenary session at WISE 2021. A special welcome to Her Highness Sheikha Moza bint Nasser. Your Highness, Your Excellencies, my lords, ladies, and gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us here in Doha, here in person, and to those of you joining us online around the world, we welcome you as well. So as we discuss the crucial goal of achieving zero out-of-school children, now, the stunning performance we just saw is a powerful message that education is a far better choice than being out of school for millions of children. We know it's a better choice for them, a better choice for their families, for their countries, and ultimately for the entire world. Zero out-of-school children was launched at WISE in 2019, and today we're following up on the commitments and progress that has been made. So we have a full hour ahead, focusing on the crucial commitments from countries to achieve zero out-of-school children at the primary level, why this is important, and how this can be done. We do encourage you to join the conversation by using the hashtag #EducateEveryChild on Twitter. You'll find us at EAA_Foundation, as you can see on the screen. So for our first panel, I'd like to invite our speakers now to the stage. Her Excellency, Dr. Isatou Touré, Vice President of the Gambia. Welcome. Ms. Audrey Azoulay, Director General at UNESCO. Will you please join us? Welcome, Ms. Azoulay. Her Highness Sheikha Moza bint Nasser, Founder and Chairperson of EAA. Welcome. Welcome to you all. Your Highness, I'll start with you. You've been an education leader and SDG advocate for decades. So much has been achieved under your leadership and vision, and now you're once again setting challenges for even greater achievements when it comes to education. So let me ask you this. Why, in your opinion, is universal primary education so important, and why particularly in this moment in time?
Yeah, thank you, Darren, for this question. Although I think this question, to me, it is as if you're asking me why water is important to our body, why nourishment is important and to our well-being. So that's why I think it's for me something difficult to comprehend, why you are depriving child's mind from the nourishment that he needs to build his faculty, to develop his well-being, and to be a full citizenship. I mean, if I would just talk about the economic side or the economic benefit of this, we have lots of evidence-based now papers and facts that link the economic growth with the quality education. And by the way, when I talk about education, I always mean quality education. I don't like to really to have this dichotomy between education and quality education. Education, for me, it is a quality education. Otherwise, we cannot call it education. So, I mean, there is this link, this causal link between education, quality education, and economic growth, because it builds the cognitive skills. With this, you are filling the market space with skilled workers. And with that, you are producing, or you are increasing the productivity of labor. And of course, that will be reflected on their GDP. And on individual level, we know now that extra year of learning can increase the earning of individual by 10%. So it is an enabler to upward socioeconomic mobility. But I don't want to see it only from this, economic investment perspective. it is also a human right. It's a birthright for each individual, each child. And also it is a way where we can instill identities and culture in the hearts and minds of these young people. To me, education is the medium by which culture, heritage can pass down to these young people. So we are building solid identity and confidence in their hearts and minds. Let me just refer to something that I heard during these last 3 days. I have seen brilliant ideas, extraordinary approaches to education. I have seen people talk about happiness, how to achieve happiness in the classroom, how to make children more satisfied in their classrooms. They are all amazing ideas and brilliant programs. But our children fall in different category. Our children, for them, their utmost happiness is to have access to a textbook. Whether this textbook is taught in a classroom with a roof over their head or not, or in a wreckage, or even under a tree in a remote village, they appreciate education. Their parents also, they cherish this opportunity of having a chance to have better future for their kids. So this is how I see education. For me, it should be seen as a basic need, as we are now, when we talk about water, other issues, poverty. Education is essential for everything. If we have educated children, it means that we have educated nation. It means that we have productive economy. And with this, we are solving other issues, I mean, economic and social issues, even cultural issues when it comes to tolerance, acceptance of others. So this is how I see education.
Right, thank you so much for that. For a global perspective, let's turn to UNESCO and Ms. Azulai. Hello. Since 2012, Educate a Child and UNESCO have partnered. And they've partnered on 6 projects in 12 countries, enrolling, this is the number, 245,605 children out of a total commitment of 305,000 out-of-school children. As strategic partners, the organizations have really worked to advocate for those left behind, including those who've been affected by crises. But the unprecedented COVID-19 pandemic really deepened pre-existing inequalities, as we know, as we've been discussing, and disrupted education systems, increasing the number of out-of-school children. Ms. Azulai, what is UNESCO's assessment and response when it comes to this?
To the COVID situation, to the crisis. Well, first let me start by thanking Her Highness, not only for this invitation today, but for our constant support to education, SDG 4, and to the UN system in this objective, including UNESCO. And from our perspective, from the global perspective that we have at UNESCO, the first shocking thing, you mentioned it, is the scale. Right. With the COVID crisis, we had 1.6 billion children out of school like this. It happened fast, it happened everywhere, and it happened at the scale that we had never seen before. And actually, one of the first roles of UNESCO was to just monitor the situation, show to our member states that they were facing the same unprecedented situation. And as you said, the most vulnerable were hit the hardest, because those inequalities are, of course, between countries, but also within the countries. And we've seen it in all the countries. The richest countries had to face the fact that distance learning is not the same, depending on your family, depending on your socio-economic situation, depending on your access to connectivity, to internet. And even when you had access to internet, and I'm sure many of you have experienced this in their families, education is not the same at a distance. Her Highness mentioned the textbooks. I would like to mention the role of the teachers as well. When you don't have someone looking at your work, telling you how you progress or not, it makes a whole difference. We need this presence of teachers, and also what we saw is that the teachers were not trained in most of the cases to distance learning. And this was one of the issues. Our numbers show that we published a study with our partners from the World Bank, OECD, UNICEF, and we showed that only 40% of countries worldwide had trained their teachers in distance learning methods and digital tools. And so most teachers were left ill-equipped to face the pandemic. And of course, we have half of the world which is not online, and 500 million students that were deprived of distance learning because they lacked internet access. So the digital divide was also widening the gender and educational divide. So what was our response? First, and I think it was very important, and I hope we will learn from that, it was a collective response. No one could deal with this situation alone, and so the role of your institutions like the United Nations, like UNESCO, was to create a coalition, a global coalition to support education during the pandemic. We started at the very beginning. I remember the creation of it. It was March 20, when we decided we needed to gather all the efforts, and we have now 200 members in this coalition, of course, multilateral institutions, public companies, the private sectors, foundations, also telecom companies, because we needed them to provide free access for educational resources, for instance. And this coalition, working in over 100 countries, worked to protect the right to education, supporting the reopening of schools as soon as possible. And that was a clear message that we sent: keep the school open as soon as possible. And this is a message which is still necessary today. Support distance learning, train teachers for distance learning, but not only online. Online when we could, with the support of the telecom industries, by the training of teachers, but also with low-tech solutions. We came back to the good old radio to have access to education programs, or we've trained as well teachers, and I remember inaugurating TV studios around the world that were dedicated to school on TV. And actually, with the Foundation Education above all, we've supported the creation in Iraq of an educational TV channel, so that there could be distance learning education even without access to the internet. So, unprecedented situation that needs unprecedented mobilization, collective solutions, and hopefully lessons learned.
Thank you so much. Vice President Turai, hello. The Gambia is the first country to commit to zero out-of-school children. Why is this goal relevant to your country in particular? Can I ask you to just use the microphone? Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm also very delighted to be here to represent His Excellency President Adama Barrow on this very great and innovative opportunity that has been brought in. First, I want to recognize the presence of Her Highness, Sheikh Moza bin Nazir, Emir, Mother, Founder and Chairperson of Qatar for Education, Science and Community Development. I also want to recognize the Director General, MS Odwe Azulai, UNESCO, Her Excellency Madam Fatoumata Bah Barrow, First Lady of the Republic of the Gambia, and the CEO, Fahad Al-Salawta of EAA, and the Honorable Ministers present here, particularly those from the education sector. I bring the greetings of His Excellency President Barrow to His Highness Sheikh Tamim bin Hamad Al Thani, the Emir, on behalf of His Excellency Adama Barrow, President-elect of the Gambia. He could not be here today because Gambia is currently just concluded an election and he is busy with processes. So I am here to represent him. I think the Gambia is very proud to be part of this initiative, and I want to say thank you for giving us this opportunity, and to say that it has made a big difference in the lives of Gambian children who might have not had the opportunity to have the chance to be educated. What needs to be considered is that it came as part of our policy direction, the perspective of the National Development Plan 2018 to 2021 and the Education Sector Policy 2016 to 2030. The issue of quality and relevance of the curriculum and learning materials continues to be a source of serious concern. And for the past 15 years, there has been a lot of work that has been going and undertaken by the Ministry of Basic and Secondary Education, which focus on improving access, quality, relevance, and also the management of education as a whole. Today, our enrollment rates have increased. Unfortunately, there are still zero out-of-school children at the primary level. A focus on Zero OOSC will provide that additional push that we must make to enable all Gambian children to realize their right to a quality primary education. The opportunity to partner with organizations that share our value for education came at the right time and aligns very well with our ongoing work supported by the World Bank and the Global Partnership for Education. A lot has been done in the Gambia with regards to this and in reaching out to take care of children who might not have the opportunity to have a chance of moving forward. And the achievement rate is very high. At least 92%, if I get it right in the document, have shown that children have access now, and the remaining lot who are the critical mass and who also, education is a fundamental human right. At every child needs to be given that opportunity to be able to deal with it because it affects human dignity, integrity, and their chance of development across the board. And I agree with what you said in terms of the holistic approach to education and getting water, making the classroom environment possible to be learner-centered, at the same time reaching out. So the Gambia has been focusing on that, and we have done a lot. With the advent of COVID, it has created an architecture. The learning architecture has changed, and the improvement, the type of innovations that came out as a result of the advent of COVID must be seen in a very positive light, because it has brought the world together to understand that this is one phenomenon that is bringing everybody together on the table, and everybody is affected, even though the impact of that may have some differential impact depending on your socio-economic background, the opportunities and the circumstances that are there. But it has also created some innovative approaches where ICT technology was used. In the Gambia, for example, we had the Ministry of Basic and Secondary Education engaging with the very remote areas where radio, which used to be something of the past, has come back again.
Right.
A lot of radios were bought, and then the use of the cell phones for children to access some of their lessons were put together. Of course, the infrastructure is needed. The teaching sessions where she raised about the gap, because this is something that was phenomenal and it was unprecedented. There was need to train the teachers, and that means a lot of efforts were made to ensure that teachers were introduced to ICT. They had to change the algorithm of the classroom from making social distances, reducing them, and that required to increase the infrastructure. So these type of challenges that came up with the advent of this process, I think was very key in taking note of, and I think this will forever change the way we do teaching and learning, because COVID has decided, that has come, and people are trying to do and discovering better ways.
Right.
And from the perspective of the Gambia, there were improvements, because the examinations that were done, even though they were done under very difficult circumstances, the children, the teachers, and the minister were able to come up with ways that was able to at least improve the pass rates. It was a very interesting outcome, but there were very serious challenges, and I think we have to focus on that. The rural areas where you have the hard-to-reach areas, it's not only about reaching with them with telephones, radio, and so on. You need the hard infrastructure.
Okay, yeah, I'd like to ask you about the main barriers that out-of-school children face in the Gambia in just a moment. But first, let me ask Your Highness, how does the EAA actually decide which countries to work with for Zero?
As you just heard from
The microphone, Your Highness.
As you just heard from the Vice President, they have done a great job in terms of achieving the universal primary education And we are choosing the countries according to their achievements and their willingness as well to achieve this goal. All of them, we have 4 countries now. We have Gambia, we have Djibouti, we have Rwanda and Zanzibar. And all of these countries, first of all, their leadership understand the importance of education as a birthright, as we said before, and also the impact of education, educated nation on the socioeconomic aspect of the country. So understanding, sharing vision, willingness to do it, and also the country has to have some good data to help us to plan and also to measure the outcomes. So for us, it is really, we have 4 countries now, and these 4 countries, for us, it's like a showcase where we can really adapt this and replicate it in other countries. That's why we are choosing countries that very close to achieve universal primary education, but there is a small gap that we are helping them to fill.
Okay, Vice President, you touched upon this just a moment ago, but I wonder if you can talk to us a little bit more about the main barriers that out-of-school children face in the Gambia, because achieving 0 out-of-school children will actually take overcoming a number of barriers.
Absolutely, absolutely. I think the first thing we have to, the underlying factor is poverty. Poverty is a key issue for many African countries, and if I may get it right, also other societies, where while education is free in some countries, and in many that's the trend, there are many associated costs that parents need to deal with, and often this results in their children not being able to access or complete primary education. Whilst there is a free education, it is not completely, totally free, because mothers are asked to be given lunch. Sometimes they have to buy exercise books. They also have to buy uniforms sometimes. And in those cases, when the family is poor, it will impact on the level of provision that that child can get in order to go, particularly where you have in a family an average of 6 to 8 children, and you want to give all of them education. So that factor is very much a barrier. Then you have the gender discriminatory practices that zero out girls due to gender stereotypes at all times. You'll find that when it comes to looking at the opportunities, particularly in poor homes or families, the chance is normally given to boys. But although this affects both boys and girls, but when it comes to making decisions, most of the time it's the girls that are compromised. You have also at all level, the majority of the boys, as is found, asked to go out and fend because of poverty, and because from an early age, boys are required to contribute to the family well-being through both agricultural work and income. Likewise, girls are also expected to marry out. If they have to make a sacrifice, it's the woman or the girl that goes out, and that has impacted a lot on that. Certainly, there are also regional and ethnic disparities, which will require nuanced approaches as we address those barriers to support the hardest to reach out to the OOSC to deal with it. The fact is that in Africa and in most of our school, our learning environments, you will find that other barriers that might affect the child, girl child, is the distance, but that has been addressed in the Gambia. No child has to walk for 1 mile to go to school now. That is as a result of your project, of the project. And here I want to recognize the role of the Minister for Basic and Secondary Education, Madam Claudiana Cole, who definitely was going from one school to another with her team, even during the weekends, to follow up on that, and going from house to house, reaching out certain ethnic groups that, you know, would not take formal education or Western education as a priority. That's so yes, the cultural barriers are there, and therefore we have to take a holistic approach to it, working with the madrasas. Yeah. We have to work with the madrasas. We also have to create some opportunities where you have special learning opportunities for those that are left behind, in order to create this space so that to reach that zero level out of school children. The other barrier that is there is also people do not understand in our cultural context and in the context of the society. When you talk about free education, or when you talk about zero level of children not going to school, they do not understand it's a fundamental human rights. And if it is a fundamental human rights, I think what needs to be done here is the state to take responsibility to ensure that every parent must make sure that any child who is born must be considered guaranteed to go to school. And here I want to recognize the role of the First Lady of the Gambia, where she is targeting very young babies who are now, whose names and their dates of birth are put into a central registry so that those ones can be captured. Because you need the technology, you need the framework to be able to address the zero level, what we want. If those things are in place, from a long-term perspective, we will be able to deal with it and be sure that we have 100% out there, because we are, the distance, access, resources is a very key issue, because poverty is an underlying factor. We have to help the mother, the father. We have to create economic activities, like you have said, looking at it from that point of view so that they can afford to give those, be motivated to do certain things, and also work on sustainable approaches that's going to help. Those barriers can be addressed. It's a question of focus, a matter of commitment and conviction, and also seeing it as a fundamental human right, where the state must come in to give all the support that is needed, and that's under the Ministry of Education and other sectors.
Can I just add something here?
Course,
because we work a lot when it comes to barriers. As the Vice President just mentioned, there are many barriers: economics, social barriers, cultural barriers. We work with in Africa and also in Pakistan, other Asian countries, where we are talking to elderly people to convince parents to take their kids to the school. The madrasa issue is there is a lot of misconception about the madrasa because of misunderstanding of Islam. So we are trying to adapt the madrasa to be a modern school concept. But there is a very interesting barrier also, because sometimes we come thinking that we understand and know everything, and we're imposing on others our understanding of how the education should be instructed. For example, in Amazon, in Brazil, there is a barrier of language. As you know, there are many indigenous people there, and those native people, they speak several languages. They can sometimes thousands. So they are reluctant to take their kids to the school because they're scared of losing their language. As you know, language is the medium by which their culture is preserved. So what we have done there, we are teaching them, or the kids, the native language in parallel with the Portuguese language. And what is interesting that I attended one of the classrooms there, and you see parents coming to the class with their kids. I think they just want to make sure that the culture is preserved, the language is taught. So this is the things that I think we always need to be sensitive about, the cultural sensitivity. It's important when we apply our understanding to other nations, because they know better than us.
Your Highness, let me just finish off with this. I mean, we heard, you were just discussing some of the barriers. We heard it as well as from Madam Vice President from the Gambia, and from UNESCO as well, who was outlining some of the challenges. So, facing all of the challenges we've been discussing, and given that the global context has really become even more complicated over the past 2 years, are you optimistic about the future of education?
I am very optimistic about education. Of course, as I said, the category of children that we are dealing with, they are really hard-to-reach children. And with the pandemic, really, it's increased the disproportionate burden on these disadvantaged children. But I am really optimistic, because I know that when we come together, we can achieve a lot. I mean, during this last few months or a year and a half, we faced the pandemic. But we were managed, and we were able to develop a vaccine, an antidote to this virus. I believe that education is the antidote for all our social pandemics. Social pandemics like intolerance, like inequality, like poverty, name it. So with education, I think if you understand the importance of education and the capability of education, I think we can achieve a lot.
Okay. On that note, we'll end it there. Your Highness, thank you so much for your vision and leadership in working towards a world with 0 children out of school. Vice President Turai, thank you for your country's commitment. And thank you, Ms. Azulai, very much for your insight and UNESCO's contribution to education. Your insights and contributions are very valuable. They're ambitious, but they're achievable. It's an achievable goal of 0 out of school children. And now I invite you to please return to your seats. Thank you. So you just heard Your Highness mention a moment ago that Rwanda is also another important EAA partner country that's committed to 0 out-of-school children. President Paul Kagame is joining us virtually to speak about efforts in his country in particular. President Paul Kagame, welcome to this session. We're glad to have you with us. Why is Rwanda prioritizing education, and how does the 0 out-of-school children strategy fit into your country's goal of achieving quality education?
Well, before I answer that, let me first of all thank the Education Above All Foundation for hosting this important and timely discussion. I want to say how much I appreciate the work of my friend, somebody I have known for quite some time, Her Highness Sheikh Amoza, to advance quality education worldwide. I remember working with her, and she was very central on education when we were serving together on MDGs before the SDGs came. So I appreciate Her Highness very much. I also commend the work that Gambia and UNESCO are doing to ensure that every child has access to quality education. Now, back to the questions you raised. In Rwanda, our greatest asset is our people. Significant investments have been made towards developing a knowledge-based economy to leverage Rwanda's youthful demographics. One target is universal primary education, and today 98% of children are enrolled. But we want to do more on the remaining 2%. Our partnership with Education Above All will help us get there faster and ensure our people are a driving force for our country's prosperity.
President Kagame, as we've heard, quality education really builds resiliency in our societies, and it prepares us for trying times and global crises like the one that we're experiencing right now. And everyone's in this together, and partnerships, as you've been saying, can be a great boost to our own efforts for tackling some of the challenges. So let me ask you this. It's clear that quality education is a priority for Rwanda. How do you see partnering with a foundation like EAA helping you to achieve the goals that you set out?
Well, the COVID-19 pandemic has revealed gaps in global education systems and threatened to reverse some of the gains made. In some cases, these systems were already weakened before, and because of inadequate funding affecting the delivery of quality education. This needs to be fixed. High quality education will make our societies more resilient to future shocks. By reaching our goal of 0 out-of-school children through our partnership with Education Above All, we intend on addressing these challenges. We are also pleased to be working with Education Above All on the Educate a Child partnership, to provide quality primary education to refugees in collaboration with UNHCR.
So, President Kagame, then how will zero primary age out-of-school children actually help equip children with the right skills as well as the right knowledge base for a better future for themselves and for the country and their communities as well?
Indeed, access to education is critical. And education is not just about memorization. It is about equipping children with a positive mindsets. If we are to see tangible results and ensure that we build an effective and productive workforce, quality should also be going hand in hand with our objectives. And our partnership with Education Above All will be a catalyst for this. Having every child educated will attract further investments to equip our citizens with the necessary skills to complete or to compete in a global economy. We are already seeing this happen with the Hamad bin Khalifa University's proposal to start a master's degree program in cyber security on the campus of the University of Rwanda. The Sustainable Development Goals, among them Goal 4 on education, cannot be limited to wealthy countries. Otherwise, it will not be inclusive and equitable. I encourage other countries to join our efforts to ensure no child is left behind.
President Paul Kagame, we thank you so much for joining us from Rwanda and giving us your insights. Thank you. So in the next part of our conversation, we're going to speak to two ministers from two more countries that have committed to this goal of zero out-of-school children, and we'll discuss more the challenges faced and also the progress that's been made in this endeavor. So I invite our next speakers to join me right here on stage. We have with us His Excellency Simei Mohammed Said, the Minister for Education and Vocational Training of Zanzibar, Tanzania. Welcome, Minister. Also, His Excellency Mustafa Mohammed Mahamoud, Minister of Education and Professional Training, Djibouti. Also joining us, Mr. Robert Jenkins, who's the Global Director of Education at UNICEF. Welcome. Welcome. Welcome, Mr. Jenkins. Have a seat. Welcome. Thank you so much for being here. Mr. Said, why did Zanzibar, Tanzania accept the challenge to enroll all children and achieve zero out-of-school children at the primary level?
Thank you very much, Darren. Let me recognize the presence of Her Highness Sheikh Moza and all the distinguished guests who are here today. I think it's important to be honest first as a country. You cannot hide, especially when it comes to quality education. A lot of people have heard about Zanzibar, but they don't even know where Zanzibar is. So let me just say Zanzibar is in East Africa. It's part of the United Republic of Tanzania. We are geographically located just south of the equator. We have a lot of history with much different cultures, especially with this region. I'm sure the ancestors from the Middle East were part of the Zenji Empire in the years. Okay. We see the importance because when we conducted in 2017 to find out about education for our youth and our kids, surprisingly, 130 to 140,000 kids out of a population of 1.5 million between the age 4 and 15 were somehow missing the basic education. And I think, I believe it's important that for this journey to ensure that the policy of the country is to ensure that every child has a right to education, especially the ordinary level, which is the 12 years. And for now, as a country, we are trying to find ways how we can do it with the economic challenges. Zanzibar has defined tourism, trade, and services. Limited resources, of course. I don't like the word poverty. I prefer to use financial constraints because it creates a sort of a difference between those who have and those who don't have. So we need to encounter on all these areas. First is, to be honest, we agree we have a problem, and we thank Her Highness and EAA for partnering with us in this wonderful journey.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Mr. Mahmoud, hello. Why has Djibouti stepped forward to take on the challenge of zero out-of-school children?
Thank you. Thank you. Your Highness, Excellencies, Director General of UNESCO, ladies and gentlemen. Greetings, very warm greetings from Djibouti and its people. And thank you for giving us this opportunity of working on our future, because investing in children means investing in the future. Djibouti is resolutely embracing this challenge, which is to enable children to learn outside of schools, and we've decided to reach this goal by 2025 to declare officially that Djibouti has reached the goal of universal primary education. We're a small country, but we invest a lot in education and training, and we thank education above all for its support and the Qatar Foundation assistance, which goal is to provide schooling to all children. Djibouti has a schooling rate of approximately 85%, and we've also reached the decision to enable all children in Djibouti to be schooled. This small country has had the courage to really make sure that all children living there should have access to school. So we are really taking up this school, which is to provide schooling to all children.
UNICEF is the implementing partner for Zero in Zanzibar, Tanzania. So why has UNICEF in particular chosen to take on this challenge?
Well, thank you for this opportunity. And I'd also like to acknowledge the leadership and support of Her Highness Sheikh Moza, and also the partnership with Director General Azaleh of UNESCO. UNICEF and UNESCO are global partners and partner in many countries all over the world. Also very much pleased to be part of this panel. And I'd like to just acknowledge EAA's ongoing support and their leadership in such an ambitious, but as you had mentioned, realistic goal of eliminating out-of-school children. And we have leaders like we have in Zanzibar. You can see what's possible, and I think that's why it's so exciting to be partnering in Zanzibar, because it shows the way for other countries with bringing knowledge and expertise and commitment at all levels, at top decision-making levels, but also at community level, schools, right down to parents and children. We've all, I think, felt the impact of COVID-19 and what it's had on children and the closure of schools. But I think the motivation of seeing a child learn for the first time, return to school, the efforts of the government of Zanzibar, other governments to ensure that each and every child realizes their dreams to return to school, it's very inspiring, and with support from organizations and very generous foundations like Education Above All, indeed we can see what's possible.
So from what we've been hearing, we see the critical positive impact that multi-sector collaboration can have on getting out-of-school children into education and actually keeping them there. So let's focus a little bit more on multi-sector relationships as a key factor of success and efforts to include the most marginalized. And we do have a message from His Excellency Jose Manuel Barroso, who's the board chair of Gavi, the Vaccine Alliance. Let's listen what he has to say on this.
Your Excellencies, honorable ministers, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, my apologies for not being able to join you in person, but thank you for inviting me to this very important discussion on what is arguably our most valuable resource and also our best hope for the future, our children. Although Gavi is currently at the center of the global effort to fight this pandemic, by making COVID-19 vaccines available to people in all corners of the world, for more than 20 years, its primary focus has been and continues to be children. We help protect around half the world's children from deadly and debilitating infectious disease through vaccination. Gavi is in essence a global alliance. It is the very foundation upon which it was built. That is why we are so proud to be working with the Education Above All Foundation, an organization that shares our belief in the power of partnership. There are many synergies between health and education, and we know that these synergies create opportunities. We know, for example, that when children miss out on school because they get sick, it can have a detrimental impact on their education and can leave them struggling to catch up. We know that areas with low vaccination rates are likely to have also low school attendance. And we know that this can become a vicious cycle. In countries where there are high levels of illiteracy and low levels of education among women, children are less likely to receive vaccination or attend school. By working together, we can help break this kind of cycle to ensure that more children are vaccinated and also that more children are educated. This exciting partnership simultaneously builds on Gavi's current strategic focus of reaching zero dose children, those children who still do not receive even a single dose of a basic vaccine, and also the Education Above All Foundation mission to achieve zero out of school children. We currently have 3 country projects in Ethiopia, Kenya, and Nigeria, and we are grateful to the Qatar Fund for Development, a donor to Gavi, representing the government of Qatar, for this support. These projects build on EAC education projects for out-of-school children at the primary level to help identify and reach zero-dose children in these communities, while further emphasizing the role of immunization in community development. These children typically live in the most marginalized communities and represent the face of extreme poverty. And so, by definition, these children are precisely the hardest to reach. That is why a business as usual approach will not work. That's why collaborative, integrated approaches that build on existing project infrastructure need to be the priority. Because the long-term benefits of good education and better health don't just turn a vicious cycle into a virtuous cycle, feeding into each other. They have broader knock-on effects, helping to reduce national health care costs and create sustainable growth of national and local economies. Ladies and gentlemen, as Nelson Mandela once said, there can be no keener revelation of a society's soul than the way in which it treats its children. By working together to reach more zero-dose children and towards zero out-of-school children, we not only honor our children's futures, but we also taking positive steps towards creating better societies in this process. I thank you for your kind attention.
We thank Jose Manuel Barroso for his message. Minister Mahmoud, of course, there's the question of financing education and initiatives to achieve zero out-of-school children. So how do you see the results-based financing working for Djibouti and out-of-school children?
In order to meet this challenge, we are working with 2 partners, Education Above All and the World Bank. To implement this program, we've identified the number of 35,000 students following a study saying that there were 35,000 children that were not schooled. And we need to identify these children, which we've done thanks to a sub-regional plan to map the needs. And we have agreed, based on those needs, to school 4,000 children per year. The funding comes from Education Above All and the World Bank. Now, the funding is innovative. It's very novel because it allows the countries to reach their objectives. And to take the example of last year, thanks to this program and this funding, we've been able to school 3,300 students, whereas the threshold was 4,000. Goal was 4,000, but because of COVID, we were able to school only 3,300. The minimum threshold was 2,200 children, so we overcame the minimum. The funding is innovative because it requires from us to reach a level, and it is only if we reach that number, that level, that the government of Djibouti is reimbursed the money that it invests. And of course, different strategies can be applied.
Thank you very much. Mr. Said, we heard from UNICEF just a short while ago, and UNICEF is another UN agency that supports education programs. So what activities are in place with your partner UNICEF to get to zero out-of-school children?
Thank you very much, Darren. Number one is, as I had mentioned earlier, that is to be honest and having identified the areas. One is to improve the infrastructure. You cannot bring kids to school when you have overcrowding. So one is to try and reduce the number of classes, partnering with the government. But most of it is to work with the local communities, from the district commissioners. We are trying to improve the wash facilities such as toilets. We keep constructing more classrooms, and we tend to forget the number of toilets that are required for especially our young students. So these are the areas that we are working with UNICEF, but we are also merging in terms of the government right now. We are constructing approximately about 1,300 new classes, and I think this will reduce overcrowding. And now with the whole partnership with EAA and our grant agent with UNICEF, I believe it is going to make a difference. And I keep saying the name of Zanzibar is very popular, but the quality of education has to match the name of Zanzibar, just like Al Jazeera and Doha.
Right, okay. Thank you very much. Mr. Jenkins, from your perspective, what do you see as the greatest challenges to zero, actually from a global perspective, and how might these challenges be overcome?
Well, I think, thanks for the question. I think one of the key challenges is to understand the numbers, to which children, how many children, where are they in each country, and what barriers do they face to realize their right to education, to enroll and to regularly attend. We all know each and every child has their own experience, and as we increasingly move to no out-of-school children, to eliminating out-of-school children, the barriers that children face are going to be comprehensive. They're going to relate to health and nutrition and safety to and from school, and a whole range of support is required to each child. So we need to have very concrete numbers. We need to be measuring those, monitoring and measuring those numbers, and we need to understand each child's reality and the barriers that each child faces. Then we need the commitment of leaders, as I mentioned before, but of partners, a collective effort. It's a bold goal, and Education Above All is obviously showing the way and a key supporter. But if we move into the millions of children that continue today to be out of school, it will require a collective effort around the UN system, with UNESCO, with UNICEF, with others like the World Bank, other global actors, but ultimately governments and education systems, other community-based partners, all to be mobilized to realize this very bold but realistic vision.
Mr. Said, is there something that you'd like to add on to?
Yeah.
And also just talk to us a little bit more about the major barriers that out-of-school children are faced in accessing an education in
Thank you.
Zanzibar,
I'd place the
Tanzania.
mic in purpose that you're going to see me. First, I think the audience would like to hear how many kids that we target working with EAC. So the target is to reach approximately 35,000 kids by 2024. In a very short duration, we've now had 7,000 kids back to school, out of which 2,400 are girls. Now, the barriers that we are facing in both the two main islands, Unguja and Pemba, one is, of course, I've mentioned earlier, is the infrastructure, overcrowding, but also the cultural barrier. The Zanzibar has one of the highest birth rate, probably around sub-Saharan. Some of the families have up to 10 kids. A young man, probably like me, 40 or 45 years old, you might see him has 8 or 9 children. Now, with the financial constraints, using all the method that he can for his finances to take care of the kids, we find that now the free education that is being provided by the government does not go hand in hand with that quality that we need. So, number of kids every year, 20% of the budget, of the annual budget of the government goes to education, and it's still not enough. So we have to find ways to educate the society, use the local leaders to understand more in terms of what's the future lies. And the interesting phenomena, yesterday during the session of the ministerial meeting, we had the vice president from the Africa Development Bank, and she picked it up that we have these dropouts. We're working with UNICEF, NEA, to ensure that they go back to school. But the chances are very high that when they become 17, 18, we have to make sure that they're able to get, by the time they become young men, above 18, 20, 21, how do we link them to vocational training? So if they can become multitask, they can survive in Zanzibar, they can survive in Kenya, and they can be part of the World Cup here to work to support the economy of Qatar 2022.
Thank you so much.
Je voulais juste revenir sur le financement.
Just 15 seconds, because we... Go ahead. No? Last
Oui,
words,
oui,
15
d'accord,
seconds,
d'accord.
yeah?
Oui, parce que le financement est un financement axé sur le résultat. Donc, une fois que le résultat est atteint, la Banque mondiale Education Above All rembourse, comme je disais, $250 par enfant. Mais ce qui est encore extraordinaire, et ça veut dire qu'il y a une entité extérieure qui vérifie si la cible est atteinte, si les chiffres sont atteints. Et une fois qu'il y a cette vérification, ça permet à Djibouti d'avoir dans la transparence de dire oui, j'ai atteint ce résultat parce que c'est vérifié par les partenaires, mais également selon un protocole d'accord par un autre partenaire. Donc vraiment, c'est une très bonne chose, ce financement axé sur le résultat qui est quelque part une gestion que nous nous sommes préparés depuis longtemps, depuis 5 ans. Le ministère de l'Éducation nationale travaille dans ce domaine-là. Merci.
Thank you so much. Thank you very much. And we thank you for all your commitments to achieving zero out-of-school children and to sharing your insights with us today. And I now invite you to return to your seats, please. Thank you so much. Thank you. Merci beaucoup. Thank you so much. So as this year's theme of the WISE Summit is Generation Unmute, as you've been seeing and hearing, let's hear from an EAA youth advocate. We have with us Munira Al-Bakir, who will speak to us from the floor. Munira, what does education mean to you? And why do you advocate for this goal of zero out-of-school children?
Thank you for inviting me to this discussion panel. It's a pleasure to be part of it. I'm here today because I understand the value of education. I'm fortunate to come from a family that values education. And I also come from a country that values and invests in education. All of this made my education possible. My education started in kindergarten, continued through to primary and secondary, which enabled access to university. Education has opened many doors for me. It has given me many opportunities, such as being here today to support the fight against exclusion. Education has enabled me to make decisions about my life and my future. This should be the undeniable right for each and every child, but unfortunately, it's not. Millions of children are out of school at the primary level, and without extraordinary efforts, they may never get an education. This doesn't only mean that they are not learning, but they are also missing the chance to play with their peers, pick up important skills, and get access to other opportunities that education can bring. Therefore, the commitments made by these countries is so important. They are valuing their children and the future of their nations. There should be zero out-of-school children across the globe. And today is an encouraging promise towards that. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Munira, for that comment. Well, it's clear that after today's conversations, that zero is a bold goal that we need to pursue with bold and concerted action. So we need to accelerate our global commitment to educate every child and really achieve zero out-of-school children. So what can be done? Well, we need more governments to make the commitment to educate every child. And by continuing to work together and by encouraging new partners from other sectors to join us, then we can find new and more creative value-adding ways to enroll millions more into quality primary education. Meeting children where they are has ensured accelerated progress in reaching millions of the most marginalized out-of-school children right around the world. And EAA's approach has encouraged a range of partners to join our targeted fight against exclusion. We thank you again for joining us for this really very important discussion, and we appreciate your time. We will see you back here in the theater at 3:30 p.m. for the closing plenary of this year's WISE. Thank you so much.